Thank you, Tristan. Um, Thank you, Jeremy. Again, thank you to the congregation here and online. As Jeremy was reciting the monster calls, and we were thinking about the courage of Connor with that monster, I was thinking about a friend of mine that I've met over the years. Her name is Reverend Sharon Risher, and she belongs to a congregation in Charleston, South Carolina. And 5 years ago, a little bit more than 5 years ago, a monster came into their congregation at AME Emmanuel. And this monster was radicalized online into white power ideology. And he prayed with this congregation for an hour before he committed an act of violence that took the life of her mother and 8 other parishioners. And we think about just kind of the evil that exists in the world. And I was kind of thinking about that as I was thinking about the inspiration for this conversation today. So today we're going to talk about sort of what it means to get beyond kindness and positivity. And that's not to say that kindness and positivity are in any way a negative trait, a negative quality to have for anyone. But I'm going to just talk about some of the ways that she spoke about kindness and forgiveness on a phone call to me as we were discussing the 5th anniversary of that hate crime that happened at that church. And I just kind of on the phone asked her how is she doing, how's the congregation, how are they feeling, and she kind of said to me, Pardeep, it seems like the world is, or media, as she pointed out, is stuck on the question of whether we forgive the perpetrator. Because that's the question that we keep getting. Do we forgive the perpetrator? And, you know, the story in media is well chronicled that there were certain people in their congregation who right away said, we forgive the perpetrator. And there was other people who had mixed feelings. Other people kind of said, I don't forgive the perpetrator. And she was in that place that she's like, I'm a reverend, I'm a Christian, and I don't know if I can find forgiveness yet. That was real, that was authentic. That was, as Connor spoke about and the monster spoke about, when we tell stories and truth becomes the healthy serum to tell that story, we unconsciously unlock everybody else's ability to also tell the truth and get away from performative kindness, positivity, and performative forgiveness. So I think as Jeremy was asking me to do this sermon, that was on the front of my mind. How can we as a society get beyond, I'm not saying get beyond compassion. I'm saying superficial, sort of toxic positivity and kindness. And then I thought about how many examples in history, either contemporary history or history before, have existed where kindness became weaponized. As the bio was read, I recently, my most recent position was with the U.S. Department of Justice. And there was a component called the Community Relations Service. This particular component was founded after the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy. So to his credit, former President Lyndon B. Johnson is credited in '65 of creating this component. And basically what the component did, and I say did because there has been an administration change. I don't know if you all knew that, but there has been. And this particular component doesn't exist anymore. But this was the peace-building component, and where we did confidential mediation agreements. But Lyndon B. Johnson and John F. Kennedy at that time said that America, where America was in the '60s, was in a place where you all know history, and to get to where we needed to get to, where this would be a truly multicultural, pluralistic society where people's civil rights, no matter of your skin, of who you like, who you don't like for that matter of fact, would be respected, was they called CRS the bitter pill that America needed to get past its mindset of white supremacy. And that's going away from, I'm going to talk a little bit about actual white supremacists, but there also exists a culture that we all exist in, whether we want to or not, that makes things unfair or sometimes just violent for people. And so I thought about that, and I thought about the civil rights movement and outside agitators. And really what happened at that time was, when we thought about white moderates often criticizing black activists, including the Dr. Kings of the world, for being too confrontational or moving too fast. Right? The weaponization of kindness looked like a call for patience, politer methods, be polite, while ignoring or minimizing the violence and injustice that prompted those protests in the first place. So now you have what I as a therapist would call, here's the presenting behavior, here's the manifesting cause. The manifesting cause gets ignored because of the over-exaggeration of the presenting behavior. Right? Anti-racism conversations that happened in schools and workplaces. Students, employees, educators speaking openly about racism, they are often told their tone is too aggressive, or the comments make people uncomfortable. Calls for respectful or civil tone are used to avoid grappling with the painful truth. The shift focuses from the content of the critique to the delivery, effectively silencing the content that needs to be addressed. Thinking about responses to the Black Lives Matter protests following the murder of George Floyd. I'm a former police officer, so this is at no way attacking all law enforcement officers or police officers. I'm very respectful to the profession. But again, instead of focusing on the loss of black lives, critics redirected attention to civility and law and order, and thus control, often portraying protesters as dangerous or irrational. The result of that becomes public discourse was shifted away from police accountability and systemic reform. Therefore, never really getting to reforms that were needed, and reforms that are often called upon by a lot of police officers. I will pass over the DEI stuff. I'll go into tone policing and in activist spaces. Again, marginalized people often told that to be effective, they need to be nicer, less emotional. Don't alienate allies. These comments dismiss the content of the message and reframe passion or urgency as incivility, putting the burden on the opposed rather than on the oppressed rather than addressing the issue again. Religious calls, as the one I spoke about with Reverend Richard at AME Church. After hate crimes and public injustice, people may often urge victims to forgive and move on. And again, don't take this as forgiveness for anyone. I have a book called The Gift of Our Wounds. And oftentimes, even when I've been blessed to work with not just hate crime survivors, sexual abuse survivors, domestic survivors, couples, people who have been through trauma, families who have been through trauma, and forgiveness for anyone, right? It's a process, and it's defined on their own terms. So I don't mean to be prescriptive and say forgiveness is this or forgiveness is that, but sometimes forgiveness is used as a bypass of meaningful consequences or structural change. It pressures the harmed to comfort those who have harmed them. And finally, a lot of times, again, within the mental health world, workers, especially BIPOC, disabled, and frontline workers, speak up about burnout, trauma, racism at work. They're told to stay positive, not bring personal issues to work. And this is not just BIPOC folks, right? Don't bring personal issues to work or participate in surface-level wellness activities instead of addressing root causes of what that burnout actually is. Corporate kindness culture sometimes avoids real accountability and makes emotional expression feel unsafe, especially for those under pressure, sometimes especially for leaders, sometimes people who feel like they can't bring all of themselves to work. In summary, kindness becomes weaponized when it is used not to heal, but to hush. When it's demanded of the oppressed, but not the oppressor. When it replaces action with optics and truth with politeness. And there's numerous examples of this, contemporary examples that are happening right now, where somebody may be seen as emotional because they're speaking about something that may impact them intimately. And now kindness may be used as a way to say, no, you're not making the discussion you're having is something I can't take on. So somehow, some way, I attack the way that you're saying it, rather than understanding the content of where it's coming from. Right. This was in 2012 when the hate crime at the Sikh temple happened. Where we lost 7 individuals to an outright white supremacist, to an affiliated white supremacist here. And I make the distinction between today's day and age, you're seeing a lot more self-radicalized, isolated individuals who are radicalized online who may not have any real affiliation with that particular group. Back in the day, in 2012, it doesn't feel like it feels like it's been kind of a long time, but back then there wasn't as much that ideology. So this person was affiliated and decided to one day in August shoot and kill everybody that he could at the Sikh temple of Wisconsin. I was fortunate to survive. My son, my daughter at the time were 4 and 6. They were fortunate to survive. My mother was also very fortunate to survive, and my father lost his life. Following that hate crime, and this is 2012, former President Barack Obama is running for re-election. many folks have already deemed America as a post-racial society. And it felt like, at that time, that some people just wanted to kind of move forward, including people in your own congregation, including people who want to just return to life as normal. This was the deadliest hate crime, again, committed by an affiliated white supremacist in 50 years, since 4 girls endured the impact of a bomb intended for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And since 65, that bitter pill of civil rights needed to be instituted, needed to be swallowed by America to really get to a multicultural society. So I think that there was a lot of people, including the people in this congregation, the people in this community, the people within our interfaith community, who stepped up and said, no, let's not just harness this, but let's understand why this happened and why we can't just move forward without real clear understanding of what we could have done to have this not happen. And there's many people in this room who raised their hands at that time, and they committed to never again. Never again. And today, I get to address, and I think was it Pat, Michelle? Like somebody said, it's kind of a homecoming, and it is. I feel welcomed in this congregation. I feel warmed in this congregation. As we think about the world of who is the other? Who is the other? We have an action that we need to be committed to. And I hope that it's not just simply about the question that I get a lot of the time, right? And I think Reverend Richard got this as well, of do you forgive the Wade Pages of the world? And that's the shooter in our situation. So I will say his name. I will not say the person's name who shot and killed 9 people in the Charleston church, because that is for that community to say their name. When you say the name of the perpetrator, sometimes it's a sense of regaining power. Because sometimes when we think about monsters, and the way that Connor thought about, and just again, young people can sometimes be so curious. Say, a story's not that scary. Well, sometimes a story, right? The way that we cement fear into our consciousness can be really scary. And sometimes the way that we understand monsters to exist in this society can be very, very scary. And so, what do we do with monsters typically? We typically lock them up. We typically throw them away. We vilify them. Whoever we deem as monsters, right? But sometimes there can be this equal comparison of sometimes the other, or somebody that just simply doesn't agree with what you're saying, can be the monster. Right now, we are creating a rejectionist society, weaponized by rejectionist media. Going forward, we need to create a lot more compassion. This experiment that the world has of 8 billion, 9 billion, 12, whatever it gets to, is now weaponized by either kindness, positive kindness, or kindness that really doesn't let us get into the nuance of the discussion, or just straight up rejection. If you don't agree with me, then I simply reject everything, and I'll reject your entire existence. So we, because of the stories we tell, create more and more monsters. And so to answer the question that was presented, I do, I do forgive the Wade Pages of the world. I do forgive him because at one point, the Wade Page of the world was just like any other young boy that we have in America. He was once a baby. He was once a child who learned how to be a man through other men who taught him that power over somebody really truly gave you power. He was an ex-military, right? Who was an alcoholic. We can forgive the perpetrator, but what does it mean to forgive the society and the systems that they exist in, or worse, maybe grow up in? And so that forgiveness, I will ask you all to join and really, really, let's create a society. Let's create just laws. Let's shift our mindset to say, who is it that we see the monster in, the other in? There's going to be places that I can't get to. Right now, there's probably a person out there who is hurting, who feels rejected, who wants to commit violence or wants to hurt somebody because he's hurting or she's hurting. And it becomes all of us, our responsibility to say, how do we move forward with a sense of intentional healing? And so with that, I thank you for everything that you have done for our congregation, for me personally. And I thank you for this rejuvenation on this Sunday morning and the commitment of work that you will move forward to. You didn't realize you guys were going to get work today, did you? Like, Pardeep is going to put you to work. So I just applaud you to reach out to somebody that maybe you have had a falling off with and see some goodness in them. And that doesn't mean that you have to agree with them cold-heartedly. You don't have to agree with all of the narrative that they have, but to see something good in them. We have some important years coming up. And again, this is not me being political. This is just me being very, very real. We have some important times coming up. We need to see a shred of humanity. If these times, if the days are going to change for the better. And so thank you for everything that you all do to see the best in each other. And thank you for all you've done for our congregation. God bless you all.